They ripped through her bag at the checkpoint, but what they found left them frozen in shock. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was hot, uncomfortably so, the kind of heat that presses against your skin like a suffocating blanket. My heart raced as I stood there, a bead of sweat trickling down my back. The atmosphere crackled with tension, an electric feeling that prickled at the back of my neck. That morning felt strangely ominous, as though the world was holding its breath. I clutched my bag close, a lifeline to the life I once knew. Inside were remnants of my past, old letters, a faded photograph of my mother smiling in the sun. Each item felt like a ghost pulling at my sleeves, begging me to remember. I could hear my heartbeat pulsing in my ears, drowning out the chatter around me. As the guards moved closer, their expressions hard and unyielding, my hands trembled. They began to rummage through my bag, their gloved fingers tearing through everything as if I were harboring secrets. It was then that I felt the world tilt. The atmosphere thickened, lips murmured in shock, and I could sense all eyes on me, wide with disbelief. And then they found it. A small, embroidered cloth, my grandmother's final gift, whispering stories of old. The guards paused, their brows furrowed, and for a heartbeat, the air froze. I watched as the color drained from their faces. Whispers darted through the crowd like frightened birds, curiosity morphing into fear. I felt the weight of 1,000 gazes, piercing into my very soul. What was so special about a simple piece of cloth? I felt confusion wrap around me like chains. My mind raced. The atmosphere buzzed as the guards exchanged glances, their eyes flaring with something unnameable. I could hear people around us gasping, "What does she have? And why are they acting like this?" My throat tightened, a lump forming as I tried to piece together the fragments of the situation. Their faces were grim, and I wondered what this meant for me. Was I in trouble? Did that cloth hold secrets that had been long buried? I was drowning in uncertainty. Suddenly, the commanding officer stepped closer, his eyes fixed on me, fierce and unyielding. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. I opened my mouth to speak, to reach for the familiar, but words escaped me. Instead, silence pulsed around us. Time stood still as every heartbeat echoed, louder than the confusion swirling through the air. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The commander's gaze felt like an electric current, sharp and demanding. The air around me shifted, thick with fear and suspicion. As his words hung in the air, I could barely process their weight. "Where did you get this?" echoed in my mind, reverberating louder than the murmurs of the gathered crowd. That I took a shaky breath, consciousness flickering between the past and the present. I could see my grandmother, her gentle hands weaving the cloth, her voice a soft melody in my memory. "From the heart of our family," I wanted to say, but those words felt futile, like trying to catch smoke. No one here knew what it meant. The story steeped within the threads, generations woven together. The officer leaned closer, his expression piercing, demanding an answer that felt like it could alter my fate. It was just a piece of cloth, but in the hands of strangers, it was a mythical artifact holding the key to my identity. I looked behind him at the faces of the onlookers. Some were curious, others sympathetic, but most were fraught with fear. I realized then that the cloth wasn't just about me. It was a symbol of everything I had been trying to escape. "Ma'am, we need to know," the officer pressed, his voice low and firm. Rounding the chaos of my thoughts, I forced words from my throat. "It belonged to my grandmother." I clutched it tighter, as if it were a fragile flame in the wind. "I don't understand why. What did she give you this for?" The sharpness in his voice cut through my uncertainty. "I don't know," I exclaimed, panic spilling into my voice. "It was just a gift, just a memory." But I was acutely aware that in this world, memories could be dangerous. His eyes hardened. "Please step aside for a moment," he ordered, signaling for another guard to take my place. I stepped back into the thrumming crowd, the suspense heavy, an open wound of anxiety. In this surreal limbo, each moment stretched agonizingly slow. I felt a flicker of desperation stealing over me. I could grasp at a lie, play the ignorant traveler who stumbled upon an uncomfortable truth. Yet, beneath it all, an unshakable disquiet told me that honesty might bind my hands. That I stood there, holding my breath. The pressing weight of scrutiny dulled my senses. Then someone in the crowd caught my eye. A woman, perhaps in her 60s, her hair silver and wild, stepped forward. "Leave her alone," she implored the guards, her voice unwavering. The sympathy in her gaze was like water to a parched throat. "It's just a piece of cloth. It means nothing." Her bravery ignited a small spark of hope within me. The tension between the officer and the woman crackled, a silent challenge exchanged. It was a fleeting moment of solidarity in a world drenched in suspicion. The commander, however, remained unmoved. "This is not your concern," he snapped back, the venom in his tone tarnishing the kindness that had flickered to life. But her presence lingered, and for a heartbeat, I felt less alone in the storm. "Do you know what it means to her?" The woman pressed on. "It's a memory of love, a piece of family. Isn't that worth recognizing?" "Enough." The officer barked, and the crowd jumped at his tone, but I stood rooted, emboldened by her unexpected defense. There was power in connection, in the whispers of shared experiences. The guards conferred among themselves. I could hear snippets of their conversation. The words smugglers and dangerous artifacts pierced through the cloud of confusion, and laughter echoed in a distant part of my mind, drowning in the encroaching tide of dread. In that moment, I realized the fate of my past was intricately tied to the present. If they viewed that cloth as a threat, I was in peril, too. Just then, something tugged at my sleeve. I turned to find a girl, no older than 10, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. Her eyes were round and trust-filled, a mirror of innocence untouched by the world around us. "They don't know," she whispered. "Not really." I knelt down, the weight of the situation tempered momentarily by her untainted perception. "What do you mean?" I asked gently. "About family," she said simply, her voice a light breeze amidst the storm. "They think things are bad, but they're just scared." Her words broke through the chaos, pouring into my heart like a balm. Despite the terrifying implications of my situation, there was still kindness in the world. For now, that was enough to cling to. But then the guards turned back, their expressions grim as they approached me. "We need to take you in for questioning," the commander announced, his demeanor stone cold. I felt a shudder crawl through me as dread crashed within my chest. Before I could respond, I felt the little girl's hand grasp mine tightly, her grip surprisingly firm. A single question flashed in my mind: what would happen next? And as uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud overhead, the world around me blurred into the background, the only clear thing being the warmth of that small hand holding me steadied. In that breathless moment, I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down. As the officers moved closer, my heart racing with fear and denial. I was on the brink of losing everything. My grandmother's cloth symbolized connection to heritage and love. And just as my world was about to shatter, an unexpected voice broke through the chaos. "Let her go? She has nothing to hide." I turned, hope alight in my chest at the familiar voice. But behind those words lurked a shocking revelation. Someone I recognized had stepped into the fray. Someone who was supposed to be worlds away, and in that instant, the great unraveling of my life twisted into an unforeseen pathway toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. The chaos of the moment erupted into a symphony of gasps and shifting weight as I locked eyes with the stranger who had spoken up for me. Amidst the guards and the anxious crowd, there stood Jonah, his intensity palpable, his familiar presence a rock amidst the storm. The breath escaped my lungs, torn between appreciation and dread at this unexpected intersection of our fates. "Jonah?" I whispered, disbelief coursing through me, a wild surge of emotions colliding. What was he doing here? His expression was fierce, pooling with an urgency that made my heart race. "You have to trust me. Just keep your head down." He stepped forward, his formidable presence cutting through the tension like a knife. The officer, still within earshot of Jonah's insistent voice, narrowed his eyes suspiciously. You need to step back, he barked, but Jonah stood his ground. The air crackled around us, the looming threat of authority versus the unexpected support of an ally. What do you know about her? Jonah demanded, voice steady, a wall against the tide of hostility. This isn't a criminal. This is a person, a woman seeking her truth. You have no idea what she's mixed up in. Boy, the commander retorted, his sharp tone like ice slicing through the warmth of Jonah's defense. Get out of the way. Jonah's resolve did not falter, and I felt the warmth of unexpected compassion surge within me, filling the cracks of fear. I know more than you, actually. I know she's not smugglers or thieves. She's a part of something so much larger. The audience shifted, a murmur of confusion accompanying his claim. I couldn't process what Jonah was offering. The magnitude of his words hung heavily in the air. Larger? I echoed quietly, hoping to understand. But before he could respond, the commander seized the moment. And how do you know that? He sneered, forcing Jonah to relinquish the initiative. How can you claim to know her story? I know her family, Jonah declared, surprising me with the revelation. They're part of the resistance. They've been fighting against the very oppression that haunts this place. An echo of understanding dawned on me, a flicker of recognition too delicate to hold on to. Memories of whispered stories around dim-lit tables during family gatherings rushed back. The legends of bravery that fueled generations. They hadn't been mere tales. They were the roots of who I was, who I might become. What are you saying? That I'm panic surged again, threatening to unravel everything in its wake. A bundle of unearned nobility laid at my feet. I don't know anything about that, Jonah. They need you, he insisted, locking his gaze onto mine with an intensity that demanded I see the truth. You have a gift. The cloth, the stories, everything your grandmother passed down holds weight. You belong to this fight. You may not know it yet, but you hold the key. The words landed on my heart like pebbles tossed into a still pond, reverberating outward, sending ripples of doubt and confusion through me. Did I really have the strength to step into that legacy? The heaviness settled on my shoulders, my identity rippling out of my control. But as I wrestled with my thoughts, I caught a glimpse of the little girl still holding my hand, watching with wide, trusting eyes. In that moment, her innocence contrasted sharply with the chaos of our lives. She believed there was goodness to be found. She'd drawn on it in a world of uncertainty and fear. Perhaps there was an echo of hope in this. Suddenly, the commander's impatience felt like an impending storm overhead, darkening what had flickered to life within me. Enough of this nonsense, he declared, reaching for me with a sense of ownership, commanding and suffocating all at once. You've heard enough of his lies. But then, with time almost suspended, before he could grasp my arm, the woman with silver hair stepped forward again, solid in her conviction. Everyone deserves a chance to choose their path. Commander, she said fiercely, do not rob her of that. At that moment, all of us guards, spectators, and even the distant voices beyond became witnesses to a truth far greater than ourselves. Each person held a tie to hope, to defiance, and most powerfully, to the stories that wove us together. And then, right as I felt the tide of possibilities rising, Jonah reached for the cloth I held tightly in my grip. We can help you find your truth, he said, vulnerability threading through his firm words. Whatever that means. But just as I opened my mouth to respond, a new presence entered the fray. 6 soldiers clad in dark uniforms marched through the crowd with grim purpose. My heart plummeted, despair curdling like old milk. They bore the shadows of authority on their shoulders, and as their eyes scanned the crowd, the weight of their gaze fell on me. That heartbeat. I understood this could be the moment it all unraveled, my identity, my past, my potential, and the meaning behind my grandmother's gift that had survived through generations like a flame flickering against the wind. Before I could process the surge of emotions in my chest, fear, regret, longing, one of the soldiers stepped forward. You, he said, his tone devoid of warmth but his intent clear. You need to come with us. The whispers of the crowd turned to deafening roars, and I felt the fabric of my world tear apart. Just as my legs began to give way beneath the weight of uncertainty, Jonah moved closer, shielding me from the encroaching darkness. Even as the soldier's hand reached for my shoulder, the finality of the moment drawing me toward an uncertain future. But as we locked eyes, I realized with a chilling clarity the path forward was far more complex than I anticipated, and it would take everything I had to navigate through the gathering storm, where nothing was as it seemed, and every choice could fracture the fabric of all I ever believed. In the throbbing silence that enveloped us, the soldier's grip tightened on my shoulder, and I felt the coldness seep through the fabric of my shirt, chilling my very core. Time seemed to shudder as the world around us blurred into an amalgam of faces, a cacophony of urgency and fear. Jonah's unwavering stance beside me was an anchor, a lifeline that held back the floodwaters of despair threatening to drown me. "Let her go," Jonah said, his voice a quiet storm, the kind that could easily fill the chasms left by uncertainty. "You can't take her away like this." The soldier's eyes flared momentarily with irritation, but there was something else lurking beneath the surface interest, perhaps? He glanced at the crowd, then back to me, a flicker of recognition playing on his features, which only deepened my anxiety. The tension was palpable, vibrating through us like an impending thunderstorm, each heartbeat taking us one step closer to chaos. As I stood between the soldier's cold authority and Jonah's fierce protection, I felt something stirring within the remnants of my grandmother's stories echoing through my mind. Tales of resilience, of bravery forged in the fires of adversity. They whispered to me, igniting an ember of courage deep within. Without thinking, I took a half-step forward, surprising myself. "I will go," I said, the words escaping my lips with a clarity that surprised even me. "As long as they don't hurt anyone else." My heart knew only one thing. I could not let the horrors of the past repeat themselves. I couldn't let the faceless dread swallow the little girl who still clung to my hand, her soft innocence piercing through my turmoil like a beam of sunlight. "No," Jonah exclaimed, stepping toward me, but the fire in my heart surged, demanding that I take control of my own fate. "Trust me," I urged, my voice steady as I turned to face the soldier. "There's no need for violence." The moment hung suspended, as if the universe itself were weighing the gravity of my decision. I could see it reflected in Jonah's eyes: fear, pride, and an unfathomable sense of loss. With a smirk that was devoid of kindness, the soldier released my shoulder, and I didn't dare look back at Jonah as I stepped forward, separating myself from the fragile connections I had just begun to form. The weight of every choice I made settled around me like a shroud, an inescapable reminder of the stakes that lay ahead. The soldiers moved in sync, forming a protective circle around me as they gestured me toward their camp, filled with anxiety-laden whispers. I exhaled a shaky breath. The shuddering uncertainty of my surroundings crept into my bones, but beneath it all was a pulse of resilience, a testament to everything I had inherited, everything I must uncover. As they guided me away from the crowd, I caught one last glimpse of Jonah, his figure outlined against the chaos. There was a shared understanding in that moment, a promise etched in the air heavy with unspoken words. He would find me again. I felt it deep down, as though our shared destinies were woven into an unbreakable thread. Then, in a moment of divine intervention, the silver-haired woman stepped forward again, her voice rising above the tumult. "You do not know the path you walk into, child," she called after me, her expression fierce with conviction. In that moment, I recognized her as more than just an ally. She was a witness to the gravity of my journey. We moved through pathways thick with uncertainty, the sounds of the bustling crowd fading behind me until only the echo of boots on hard ground remained. Each step felt like a final farewell, a conscious choice to put distance between yesterday's ties and tomorrow's potential. As we approached their camp, the energy shifted. A heavy weight settled in the air, an unshakable sense of foreboding that made my skin crawl. Terrified curiosity gripped my heart. What lay ahead? Would they truly hurt me, or was this all part of something larger, a game played with human lives? Just as fear threatened to clutch at my throat, I felt a sudden warmth at my side. The little girl who had once held my hand was now at my heel, her small size a beacon of purity in this swirling contempt. "Don't worry," she said quietly, her innocence shining through her wide, trusting eyes. "You're strong. You're like the stories." Her sweet faith sparked something fierce inside me, rekindling the ember of bravery I had lit within. I felt the ties of my grandmother's legacy forge anew, pressing around my heart until they felt almost tangible. But even as I mustered my resolve, I knew the path ahead was fraught with uncertainties that could unravel everything I had ever believed about myself. And then, as if to underscore my mounting dread, the soldiers stopped, their commanding presence suddenly more daunting. The leading soldier turned to me, his eyes narrowing, a smirk raising the corners of his lips. "You're going to want to see this," he said, reaching inside my bag without waiting for permission. My blood ran cold as he rummaged through the contents my past laid bare. There, among the worn cloth and personal belongings, lay an object that could disrupt everything: my grandmother's journal. It bore the weight of unspeakable lore and secrets tied to the resistance, secrets that could shatter the foundations of the world I tried to navigate. The soldier pulled it out, holding it aloft like a trophy, his eyes glinting with dangerous intrigue. Well, he said, a mocking glint in his voice. "Looks like we're in for an interesting conversation, aren't we?" In that instant, I understood the labyrinth of choices I had to navigate. My heart raced, the stakes raised higher than I ever expected. Whatever lay ahead would challenge the very essence of who I was, threatening to expose truths that could reshape my destiny or destroy it entirely. The atmosphere shifted as the soldier held my grandmother's journal aloft, as if it held the power to pull the very fabric of our reality apart. It was a fragile relic, crammed with stories, secrets, and forgotten dreams written in her looping script, out of place in the raw fierceness of the camp surrounding us. The other soldiers peered at it, intrigued and wary, their previous bravado faltering under the weight of something they did not understand. That I felt a small gasp escape my lips, fear lodging itself like a stone in my throat. "Put that down," I demanded, my voice trembling but strong. I desperately wanted to reach for it, to snatch it back and protect everything it held. But I stood paralyzed, aware of how my request seemed both futile and reverberating with significance. "Interesting wording for someone who can't afford to be picky," the leading soldier replied, his sneer deepening as he flipped through the pages. "Let us see what ghosts of the past are haunting you, shall we?" My heart hammered like a drum in my chest, memories of whispered tales about resistance and bravery flooding my mind. Every word in that journal had the potential to feed the fire of their interest or expose my lineage and bring ruin to everything I sought to protect. Would they interpret my grandmother's stories as a weapon or a reason to exploit us? A wave of warmth nudged my elbow, a small reminder of hope in the chaos. The little girl beside me watched with wide, innocent eyes, as if sensing the gravity of this moment, her tiny hand reaching timidly for mine. "Don't worry. You're just like the stories," she repeated, a mantra against the uncertainty that loomed over us. The soldier's fingers danced over the delicate pages, ceasing momentarily at a passage I recognized, a story of sacrifice, whispered within the family for generations. He looked up, curiosity sharpening his gaze. "Seems like your dear grandmother had quite a colorful life." His tone dripped with condescension, a stark contrast to the pride my family held for our past. "What do you say, darling? Care to enlighten us?" In an act of defiance born from the buried strength of my ancestors, I stepped forward, the taste of courage filling my lungs. "You have no idea what you're meddling with. This is more than just ink on paper. It's a legacy." I felt the little girl squeeze my hand tighter, grounding me in this whirlwind of emotions and uncertainty. The leading soldier raised an eyebrow, intrigued rather than threatened. "A legacy? Stories of resilience, of defiance against cruelty." I found my voice, emboldened by the truth I carried and driven by the innocence beside me. "You don't have to be the monster in this story. You can choose something different." His expression faltered, amusement replaced with a hint of genuine contemplation as the words settled in the space between us. I could see the inner conflict starting to unfold, a slow shift, perhaps unearthed by the anomaly of my courage standing against his calculated malice. As much as it felt like a moment of connection, I knew it wasn't enough to sway the current of our realities. The tension hung heavy, a thread stretching tautly between our worlds. The soldiers surrounded me, and despite their temporary falter, I sensed the larger narrative still unfolding, a struggle for power, a desire to control the narratives of the past. Suddenly, A voice rang out from the shadows of the camp. "Leave her alone." A figure emerged, a woman draped in tattered fabric, her eyes fierce with anger. "You don't know the wrath of those whose histories you toy with." I recognized her as a part of the community I had briefly glimpsed before, an existence of power and fear woven together, a bubbling cauldron of unfulfilled tales. The soldiers shifted nervously, understanding that the stakes were rising. Behind her, a small crowd began to gather, faces filled with a mixture of hope and agitation. "Enough of this charade," the leading soldier barked, reverting to his dominant demeanor, though his voice wavered slightly. "This is not your fight." Pushing forward, the woman spoke. With conviction, "Do not underestimate the strength of our stories. You stand here holding history, and while you think you can twist it for your ends, there are those of us ready to reclaim our voice." Word of the resistance is spreading. The atmosphere crackled with an electric charge, a battle not only of bodies but of ideologies. Each moment felt suspended in time, the air thickening with anticipation. "Let us see where this path leads," the soldier taunted, though uncertainty lay beneath his bravado. His grip tightened on the journal as if it had suddenly turned to lead. "Perhaps this is the opportunity to make an example of you all." Fear gripped my heart, a sudden realization crashing over me. The choices ahead had just become vastly more complicated, reaching beyond my personal plight into the crisis of an entire community. Could the fervent murmurs of resistance rise against us, wrapping around my grandmother's legacy, fighting for its preservation? Hope flickered against the edges of despair. The little girl looked up at me with unwavering faith. "Just like the stories," she murmured again, believing something greater was at work, something worth fighting for. My world pirouetted in a dizzying spiral as the soldier's smile faltered for the barest moment, and I knew. Within the shadow of their attempts to claim power, I felt a resolve developing, a whispered certainty that our legacy would not be drawn down into darkness without a fight. And then, as the tension reached its zenith, a nearby explosion in the camp shook the ground beneath us, sending shockwaves through both soldier and community alike, reverberating danger and promise. In that moment, the fragile threads of our intertwined fates ignited further into chaos, setting the stage for something larger than any of us could comprehend. The world spun, leaving us hanging on the precipice of revelation and peril, the unexpected turmoil driving us deeper into the heart of our struggles. The ground beneath me trembled, the deafening roar of an explosion tearing through the camp like an angry beast unleashed. Dust and smoke swirled in the air, filling my lungs with a choking blend of fear and adrenaline. The soldiers flinched, their authority momentarily shattered before the chaos that erupted around us. Instinctively, I pulled the little girl closer, shielding her from the pandemonium unfolding. Screams punctuated the chaos, echoing off the cold metal of the camp structure. My heart raced, filled with a mix of terror and an instinctive urge to protect. I looked at the soldier, his bravado stripped away as uncertainty clouded his expression. The journal slipped from his fingers, landing softly on the ground. It lay there, a precious beacon amid the turmoil, fragile yet powerful. The fierce woman who had spoken up for us turned her gaze toward the chaos, as if willing it to reveal a hidden truth. "They'll understand now," she breathed, though I couldn't tell if it was a statement or a prayer. Her eyes glinted with a fierce determination, embers against the hurricane of fear surrounding us. Before I could gather my thoughts, the commotion grew louder. Clusters of soldiers regrouped, their movements hurried as they sought to restore order. Men shouted orders, and I could see one dimly grasping a radio, his voice rising futilely against the tide of rising panic. But amidst their scramble, there lingered a flickering hope. The little girl clung to my side, her expression one of unwavering trust. "Are you scared?" she asked, her voice small yet unyielding against the cacophony. "No," I managed, forcing strength into each syllable. But inside, fear wrapped tightly around my heart, squeezing until it felt as if it might burst. Following her gaze, I traced her finger to a figure emerging from the smoke, a silhouette too familiar to overlook. My breath hitched as a face emerged from the haze. "Eli," I called despite the churn of chaos, recognizing the man who had been part of our resistance group. He staggered into view, his clothes tattered and eyes wild, yet alive. "Stay right there," he shouted, his voice commanding above the shouts and explosions. He sprinted toward us, urgency radiating from his every movement. "They're pushing harder. We need to move." "Eli, wait," I cried, looking back at the Soldier S group, but there was no turning back now. In a moment that felt suspended in time, I grasped the little girl's hand tightly, our connection grounding me amid the rush. But Eli was already upon us, dragging me and the girl along as he pulled us away from the fallen chaos. "We have to go now." His eyes bore into mine, desperate but filled with a fierce determination I craved. "They're losing control, and we can use this to our advantage." As we wove through the frantic swirling of soldiers and people alike, I could feel the tumult in my chest, a mixture of fear and adrenaline pulsing as my surroundings blurred. Each step echoed the choices laying like stones before me. Do I leave behind my grandmother's journal, our legacy a flickering candle in this storm? But before I could act, Eli nearly yanked me into a deserted tent, shielding us from the chaos outside. The stench of smoke and fear mixed together, overwhelming yet familiar. I turned to Eli, seeing no time for retreat, no measure for how I could reclaim the journal. "What is happening out there?" I demanded, breathless. "They're surrounding us," he explained, sweeping the tent's entrance with a cautious glance. But we've got a moment. The explosion distracted many. There's a chance to push further into the camp. Hope boiled in my chest, but doubt stirred like an unwanted ghost. "What about don't think of what we might lose?" he urged, voice low and penetrating. "We're here for the people, the stories still waiting to be told. Trust in that legacy." His intensity bore through me, and for the first time, I realized we were not merely holding on to the past. We were all co-authors of our destiny. Before I could respond, we heard footsteps approaching, the sound heavy and foreboding. Eli's expression shifted from determination to alarm. The little girl clutched my waist, her tiny heart echoing a rhythm of uncertainty against the chaos. "I'll distract them, stay hidden," he ordered, clenching his jaw. "No." I struggled against the urge to follow him, to risk everything. "I have to," he insisted, urgency flaring in his eyes. "If they find you," the tent flapped violently as footsteps grew closer. An old gust of wind swept through the fabric, sending chills up my spine. Realization dawned, a myriad of choices laying before me like a puzzle, unfurling paths lined with hope and peril. Just then, something caught my eye near the tent's edge, a small bundle caught in the shadows, a stray bag pulled partially out of the debris. My heartbeat quickened, adrenaline sparking at the sight of it. "Wait," I blurted, lunging towards it, unable to ignore the pull it had on me. I knelt and reached in, my fingers wrapping around something unmistakable. A photo, the faded image of a smiling group of people, my grandmother among them, frozen in a moment of joy and defiance. In that instant, my decision crystallized. This was our legacy. These stories were the defiance that would rise from the dust of despair. The footsteps outside halted abruptly. I looked up, frantically aware of Eli's looming decision, and I squeezed the photograph in my hand. "Eli," I whispered urgently, fear spiking with recognition in my gut. "Don't go. We can't split now." Through the flap, a soldier's voice rang out, calm yet threatening. "Search the area. They're here somewhere." The weight of dread descended like a heavy fog. Both Eli and I frozen in that moment, a mirror of choices mirrored against the uncertainty of our fates. I glanced back at the girl. There was fear in her eyes that urgently tugged at my heart. "Eli," I breathed, but with each syllable, the choices narrowed. The soldier would come soon, and with them, the choice of battling the past against our hope for the future. And then I remembered my grandmother's stories, the courage spinning within those pages. They were painstakingly crafted lessons of resilience born from the very depths of despair. Would they understand our legacy? Would they see us, truly see us, as more than the shadows that haunted them? I needed time. I needed space. I needed go. Eli urged suddenly with a steely resolve, moving quickly to step back into the chaos. "Wait." I tried to protest, but the command was muted by heavy noise swelling outside. "Save the stories," he shouted back before plunging headlong into the fray, disappearing into the chaos, leaving me with trembling breaths and a fragile decision clutched in my hands, everything upon the precipice of revelation teetering just beyond reach. As the tent rippled in the wind, shadows danced menacingly at the threshold, the world spilling into disarray. Our worlds were colliding, and the bitter taste of rivalry and courage mixed into an unyielding clash that promised more than just survival. But just what would I have to sacrifice in the name of that survival? In the depth of history, in our tales of resilience, what hidden truths awaited us, waiting to unfold beyond the veil of desperation? And as darkness began to close in, I felt time still around me, a heartbeat echoing in the void, suspended between fear and the unknown, as the collision drew ever closer. The wind howled outside, shaking the metal frame of the tent as I crouched in the dim light, the photograph still clutched tightly in my hand. Eli's form had vanished, swallowed by the chaos he had dove into, leaving me with a torrent of uncertainty. The rumble of soldiers' boots echoed outside, and the fear that wrapped around my heart threatened to suffocate me. "Stay calm," I whispered to the little girl beside me, her wide eyes reflecting the shadows that danced across the tent walls. "We're okay." But inside, I felt anything but. "Where did he go?" she asked, her voice trembling with innocence and concern. I couldn't tell her the truth, that in the world we inhabited, even bravery could lead to fragility, that every man and woman we held dear could become a whisper lost in a storm. The sound of fabric ripping from the tent flaps jolted me upright. Without thinking, I darted to the back, pulling the little girl beneath an overturned table, trying to shield her from the encroaching darkness. "Stay quiet," I urged, feeling my heart pound in sync with the chaos outside. The entrance flapped open, and harsh light flooded the tent. A troop of soldiers burst in, their frames tall and imposing. My throat tightened as I peered through the gaps in the table, every muscle in my body braced for whatever was to come. "You," one of the soldiers barked, directing his attention at a junior private with a pale complexion. "Search that area." He pointed toward a cluttered corner filled with remnants of supplies tossed about in the explosion. I held my breath. The little girl pressed so tightly against me I could feel the flutter of her heartbeat, a shared pulse of fear. What if they found us? What if they found Eli? Then, as if in a strange twist of fate, the private stumbled upon something, a small black bag, half buried under a pile of canvas. He pulled it out and unzipped it. My heart raced. I recognized it as one of the bags from my grandmother's things, items taken when we fled our home. The soldier's eyes lit with surprise and intrigue as he rummaged through the contents: letters, drawings, and photographs, all pieces of a life that had been woven together with love and laughter. "What's this?" the soldier murmured, lifting out a crumpled, yellowed piece of paper that had long lost its crispness. That I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't read out loud. Wouldn't uncover our secrets, our history, our humanity laid bare before them. "It's just junk," the junior private chimed in. "People lost everything back then. Throw it out." But the commanding officer's brow furrowed as he read the paper. "No, wait. Look at this." I couldn't see what he held, but the tone in his voice shifted the atmosphere, creating a bridge over the chasm of fear blossoming within the tent. "Is this?" The soldier hesitated, glancing around as if afraid to confirm what he was holding. "This is a letter from a survivor. It talks about the camps, the experiences there." I felt heat rise to my cheeks as a surge of anger blended with the helplessness. He was unearthing stories that belonged to us, our hopes, our pain, our truths. The other soldier leaned closer, intrigued, as if drawn by a light that had been hidden under layers of ash and smoke. "What does it say?" "It's a story about resilience." The commander's voice had softened, weaving an unexpected thread between this ruthless man in uniform and the fragile paper. They were fighting for something more, for hope. A fleeting moment of silence enveloped the tent, heavy and pregnant with possibility, a stark contrast to the chaos enveloping the camp outside. "Then we shouldn't waste time searching the tent," the private snapped, snapping back into his harsh demeanor. "They're out there, preparing to strike again. Let us move." The heavy weight of footsteps began to recede, the men leaving the tent with hardly a thought about the contents they had disturbed. I breathed out a sigh of relief, but felt confusion churn violently within me. Outside, the clamor started to rise again, the urgency pressing against our fragile moment of connection. The little girl stirred, her face still etched with unease. Are they gone? With uncertainty still brooding, I carefully peered out from our hiding place. The soldiers had indeed left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they had uncovered more than just letters. They had glimpsed the soul of our fight, and I wondered if, deep down, they could ever really understand us. I pulled the girl into a protective embrace. A fresh wave of determination surged within me. If there was any shred of hope to build upon, I needed to find Eli and show him the photograph that could breathe life into our narrative. Let us go, I said softly, slipping out from the edge of the tent, the world outside still pulsing with chaos. Hand in hand, we began to move, carefully navigating a sea of unrest, every heartbeat a question standing at the brink of revelation. Then, unexpectedly, I heard a familiar voice yelling my name, piercing through the distance. Where are you? It was Eli. Relief flooded through me, but I quickly noticed the tone a mixture of desperation and urgency. Eli, I called back, my voice cracking, eyes darting around, searching for him in the small flurry of bodies. Where are you? He appeared on the horizon, staggering back toward me, but his expression sent frigid terror coursing through my veins. He was being pursued. Panic clawed at my throat as he drew closer, breath ragged, eyes wild with fear. Run, he shouted. But even as he warned, I caught a glimpse of what pursued him, a group of officers, their uniforms stark and threatening against the backdrop of chaos. They're coming for us. My heart plummeted into my stomach, terror spiraling as the distance closed in, but not without a sliver of hope threading through the madness. Eli was here alive, despite the odds stacked against us. With the little girl's hand in mine, I raced toward him, uncertain of what lay ahead but driven by a singular thought. The untold stories of our lives would not be lost. Not today, but as we rounded the corner toward the main path, a thunderous crash erupted nearby, sending shockwaves through the ground and shrouding us in a cloud of dust. Shadows danced upon the smoke, and as I squinted through the haze, something glinted, drawing my attention to the area that had just exploded. Look, I gasped, pointing toward the debris, where I saw something shining among the wreckage, a beacon of danger and opportunity tangled in an unseen fate. Keep moving, Eli shouted, but something drew me in a desperate need to uncover the truth hidden within the debris. In that glimmer, I felt a pull, a connection to whatever lay underneath, as if it held the secrets of not only our future but the histories that led us here. Go, Eli urged again, just as the soldiers began to regroup, their attention shifting toward us, determination igniting in their eyes, and suddenly and irrevocably, everything became clear. The past would cry out for acknowledgement, and it was our responsibility to answer that call, come what may. But in the depths of uncertainty, as I reached for the object, I felt the grip of fear rise, uncertainty melding with clarity, a reminder that I was caught between what we had fought for and what we were unwilling to lose. As I pulled it free from the rubble, a gasp caught in my throat. The photograph, bearing our faces, was no longer just a memory. It had transformed into something extraordinary beneath the layers of history, a testament to our resilience, lingering between the war-torn remnants of our struggle and the hope we carried into the chaos ahead. And as the world around me erupted, moments hung suspended in time, taut with potential, poised to unravel an unwritten chapter that would change everything. The photograph felt different in my hand now, no longer just a piece of our past. It had become a heavy harbinger of what was at stake. I gazed at the faces captured within its faded borders, Eli and me, laughing on a sun-drenched day, oblivious to the shadows that loomed on the horizon. It transported me back to a time of carefree innocence, but that memory was fraying at the edges, much like our current reality. Eli's voice pulled me back, sharper now. We don't have time, please. Panic pulsed through him, as if our lives depended on every second spent lingering in that spot. We need to go. But I couldn't shake the sense of urgency that clung to me. The photo felt like a tether to everything I was fighting for. Just hold on, I whispered, turning it over in my fingers as if it could unlock some portal back to the warmth we had once known. From the corner of my eye, I saw a movement. The soldiers were regrouping, their presence looming like a storm cloud overhead. Lena, now. Eli's voice broke through, shaking me free from the spell of nostalgia. The world outside had shifted, sounds of shouting and clanging metal blurring into a cacophony that rattled my core. I clutched the photograph tightly and took a deep breath. "I'm ready," I said at last, though uncertainty gnawed at my heart that we turned to sprint away, but the ground trembled again, a reminder that the very earth beneath us seemed to be under siege. We darted through the chaos, my heart pounding, drawing resilience from the photograph still tightly held against my chest. I could feel the weight of Eli's fear intertwining with my own, a bond that pushed us forward even as doubt threatened to derail us. As we rounded a corner, the crowd parted like water, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of normalcy in the near distance, a small gathering around an old water pump where civilians filled their canisters. In the midst of chaos, moments of human kindness sometimes flickered like quivering flames trying to survive a storm, but I halted instinctively, something profound stirring in me. "Eli," I pulled back, catching sight of an elderly man who was struggling with his load of heavy buckets, his frail body shaking under the burden. "Let us help him." "What? Are you out of your mind?" "We need to," Eli began, desperation clear in his voice, but I interrupted. "This is who we are," I insisted, stepping forward. "If we forget our humanity, everything else is meaningless. We're still alive, and we can still help others." Eli hesitated, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with the weight of my words and the immediacy of our situation. But in that moment, the elderly man looked up, his sunken eyes filled with gratitude and realization, a small flicker of hope igniting in the debris that surrounded us. Guided by a faint smile, he offered us a fragile connection to the world as it once was. Without another word, Eli followed my lead, and together we rushed to the man's side, easing the heavy buckets from his trembling hands. "Thank you, young ones," the old man murmured, and an inexplicable warmth surged through me. "Just doing what we can," I replied, struggling to maintain my resolve while reality circled back to my mind, reality that offered no guarantees. The sound of footsteps approached quickly, sharp and deliberate, but I couldn't let fear take hold just yet. "Eli, we should listen," he urged, snapping my focus back to the present, where the image of soldiers closing in seeped into my bones like frost. "We have to go. Now." I nodded, torn but unwilling to let go of the brief moment of kindness we had shared. The elderly man clasped my hand for a heartbeat longer, as if imprinting some unseen strength upon me. "Don't forget who you are," he whispered, his voice a gentle reminder, before we turned away from the warmth of that connection and back into the storm. Adrenaline surged through us, and the world began to blur again. We sprinted through the camp, intentionally weaving between tents, desperate to keep our trail hidden from the soldiers who hunted us. But the weight of the photograph seemed to anchor me to the past, pulling me into the immensity of emotions swelling within, from love and loss to fear and hope. Then, as we reached a narrow path leading away from the heart of the chaos, an explosion rocked the ground, sending shards of dirt and debris skyward. I stumbled, falling hard against a rough-hewn surface, my breath stolen by the shockwave. A ringing filled my ears, moments dragging like hours, and as I blinked away the dust, the world slowly came back into focus. I glanced around, my heart pounding in an unsteady rhythm. Eli was crouched over me, his expression a blend of concern and urgency. "Lena, we need to keep moving." The fire in his eyes betrayed a hint of panic as he gripped my shoulders, steadying me. "I'm okay," I managed, still reeling from the disorientation, but that was a lie. Fear seeped deeper as I tried pushing myself up, realizing some pieces of my resolve were crumbling. And just as I regained my footing, the unmistakable sound of shouting echoed above, one voice raising starkly against the others, a voice that hung in the air long after the sound faded and time dragged. "Lena, Eli." It was a voice I recognized all too well, the voice of my brother, Marco, a light against the encroaching darkness. But his timbre rang with a mixture of despair and urgency that sent cold fingers wrapping around my heart. "Marco." The call slipped from my lips, but as shadows converged, the reality of his presence washed over me. Encompassing everything, I felt a weighty comfort intertwined with fear. "Run!" came a shout, my brother's silhouette visible in the distance, a figure moving through the haze. But suddenly he was gone, absorbed back into the chaos. "Lena." Please, we need to go. Eli urged again. Panic threading his words, we turned to flee, but a new truth solidified in my chest. Binding me to the mission, we had reluctantly accepted the urgency to find Marco. No, we can't leave him. I spun around, desperation igniting me, linking our fates once more. Eli's eyes widened with realization. We'll find him together, but we can't risk exposing ourselves. His voice was steady but sure, filled with a warmth that shielded me, even in this storm. In that moment of collision between combative survival and the lingering hope of family, I felt all the pieces shift, the photograph in my hands stirring with untold stories, whispering of ties that could never be severed. I wouldn't let go. But just then, an explosion erupted again nearby, and the smoke coiled like predator's breath, revealing a figure standing directly in our path. A soldier, silhouetted against the backdrop of chaos, his weapon drawn, eyes trained on us with intentional scrutiny. Time slowed as I prepared for the inevitable clash, a world bubbling with tension, where stories collided against the unyielding drum of survival. We were caught between history and a future we couldn't yet fathom, and in a heartbeat, everything stood on the precipice of revelation, waiting to plunge into the abyss or soar into the light. Lena, let us go? Eli shouted, breathing heavily but unwavering. Yet the weight of the photograph pressed against me, intertwining our futures in one final moment, glittering just beyond our grasp. The path ahead narrowed, choices unfurling like ragged banners in a storm, leading us directly into the unknown. The soldier's gaze shifted from Eli to me, a momentary flicker of confusion crossing his features as he took in the photograph still clutched in my hand. The weight of that moment pressed heavily on my chest, heart pounding against the echo of the explosion still reverberating in my ears. Identify yourselves, he barked, stepping closer. Eli instinctively moved to shield me, positioning his body as an unyielding wall between me and the soldier. We're just trying to find our way home, he stammered, voice trembling, desperation spilling out like a cracked dam. Home, the soldier echoed, eyes narrowing. You think there's a home left for people like you? The bitterness in his tone reverberated through me, echoing a truth I'd feared to confront. I glanced at Eli, whose determination remained, but I could feel his hands shake slightly, the realization of our fragility settling in. No, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. There's still kindness. There's still hope. We're looking for our family. The soldier scoffed, though his eyes betrayed an undercurrent of something softer, something buried deep beneath the layers of uniform and duty. And then I made a decision, the photograph slipping partially free as I spoke. This is my brother, Marco. He's lost, and we were hoping to find him. The soldier's brow furrowed as he caught sight of the image within the weathered confines of the photo. Eli remained tense at my side, a defensive stance bleached with fear and defiance. Slowly, the soldier's demeanor shifted. You think this means anything to me? No, I admitted, my heart striving to break the wall between us. But it means everything to me. To us. In that fraction of shared vulnerability, I stretched out my palm, the photograph trembling in the wind, hoping the gesture could transcend the chaos. I need to find him. Can you help us? Please. His eyes darted over the image, absorbing the joy captured within it. For the briefest of instants, the hardness in his gaze softened, replaced by something reflective. Then, as if the world had snapped back into sharp focus, he pushed the photograph away, dismissive. I can't. If the higher-ups see you, you'll be taken in, or worse. From behind the soldier, the shadows deepened, the cacophony of the world around us smothering what little hope had sparked. Eli pressed against me, whispering urgently, Lena, we can't lose this moment. He's right. We have to move. But before I could respond, a new sound rippled through the air. Sharp as glass, an urgent command barked from the far side of the checkpoint, growing closer. The soldiers who had once merely loomed in shadow suddenly became figures charging towards us, boots pounding against the ground like a war drum. Run! Eli screamed, his grip on me fierce as he pulled me away from the oncoming threat. In that frantic sprint through the clearing, adrenaline surged anew as we darted past makeshift stalls and scattered civilians. My mind spun, each heartbeat echoing the urgent whisper of the soldier's gaze, and the photograph that felt heavier with every passing moment. Over there, Eli pointed to a narrow alley, tucked between two crumbling walls that seemed to promise a possible escape, if only temporarily. We dashed into the dark void, the shadows cloaking us like a shield, though I knew it was a fleeting reprieve. Once we caught our breath, I turned to Eli, the tempest of emotions crashing through me. We can't give up on Marco. If he's anywhere near here, we have to keep looking. Determination etched itself into my features. I can feel it. But the soldiers won't stop hunting us, Eli replied softly, his voice betraying the fear gnawing at him. The odds be damned. I interrupted, my voice breaking but resolute. When have we ever backed down from a fight? Not you, not me. We're in this together, Eli. If it means risking everything, then so be it. But I won't leave Marco behind. In that moment of fierce determination, as we navigated the winding alleyway, I remembered the elderly man by the water pump and the flicker of humanity we had shared. There was strength in connection, and despite the storm surging outside, hope could still ignite in the smallest of gestures. Just as we reached the alley's end, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman clad in tattered clothes, her face smudged, but carrying an air of resilience. She paused, eyeing us carefully, sensing the weight we brought with us. "Please, help us," I pleaded, desperation tainting my words, knowing full well the fragility of trust in this crumbling world. The woman stepped closer, her eyes darting between us and the entrance we were fleeing. "You need to understand, it might not be safe here. They don't take kindly to strays anymore," she murmured, but there was an undercurrent of something more understanding, perhaps. "Then help us find my brother," I implored once more, the photograph still held tightly in my fingers. "If you've seen anyone, please tell me. What's his name?" The woman's voice shifted but remained cautious, a flicker of empathy slowly melting the ice around her defenses. "Marco," I breathed, a prayer on my lips. As I searched her eyes for a hint of hope, she hesitated but looked over her shoulder, then back at us. "You might find him, but it won't be easy. They've taken so many to the north, used them for their own purposes. You'll need to trust me." Eli and I exchanged glances, weighing risk against the slimmest chance of finding my brother. "Fine," Eli said quietly, nodding slowly despite the trepidation swirling within him. But before the woman could respond, a commotion erupted from the entrance of the alley, voices rising in anger, footsteps pounding our window of escape swiftly slamming shut. "Go," she urged, grabbing our wrists with surprising strength. "Follow me." In the chaos of suddenly shifting currents, my heart raced anew, uncertainty mingling with desperate hope. As we plunged deeper into the dark, the world outside, once bursting with possibilities, now felt like a fading echo, an outlier caught between the now and the unknown. And then my pulse froze, the photograph slipping from my grasp, unfolding like a moth into the shadows, set loose into the chaos as a reminder of everything at stake. Eli's eyes widened, my heart dropped, the photograph spiraling through the night, a tangible tether to every cherished moment lost and yet to be found. "Lena," Eli shouted, but the words were drowned out as I turned, desperate to reclaim that piece of our past, as the crowd surged and chaos erupted around us, dark, unyielding, and full of possibilities we never dared to fathom. In that flicker of desperate hope, I felt something shift, a bond deepening amidst the uncertainty, binding us not only through fear and loss, but through the fierce determination to reclaim what had been taken. As I scrambled forward, the questions loomed heavy like storm clouds gathering overhead, a single truth igniting within me. Everything was at stake, and now the race truly began. When the world had torn itself into jagged pieces and scattered my family like ashes in the wind, I never imagined I'd find myself standing here, alone yet connected to everything I had fought for. I leaned against the cold, rough wall of the alley, panting heavily, my palms clammy with sweat and uncertainty. My heart raced, each beat echoing the urgency of the moment. Eli motioned for me to keep moving as the woman ushered us deeper into the shadows, her presence radiating an intensity that filled the void left by the loss of guidance. "This way," she urged, glancing back toward the chaos unfolding in the streets. I could hear the distant shouts, my mind screaming for the familiar call of Marco. My brother lost, yet somehow still within reach. Holding on to hope felt like clutching onto the last thread of a fraying rope, but that spark wouldn't flicker out easily. Do you think he is all right? I whispered to Eli, urgency lacing my voice. I hope so, he replied, his expression a storm of emotions. But we can't waste any more time. We darted through the alley, chasing the faint promise of salvation and reunion, but with every step, the shadow of uncertainty loomed over me. What rescue could possibly allow light to seep through the cracks when darkness thrived on chaos? My thoughts spiraled into desperation as we turned another corner, the alley narrowing, the air thickening with palpable tension. Stay close, the woman warned, her eyes scanning the terrain ahead, urgency dripping from her every word. We need to reach the safe house before they close in. I nodded, my heart pounding not just with fear, but with a realization that peeling back the layers of uncertainty would require more than mere bravery. It would need a willingness to confront the raw truth of our lives. A gasp escaped my lips as the woman halted abruptly. This way, she hissed, pulling us into a darkened doorway. The moment we crossed the threshold into the cramped confines of the hidden space, silence suffocated us like an embrace. Marco, I whispered, an incantation that echoed back like a prayer. He is out there, I know it. The woman regarded me with a penetrating gaze, her expression shifting from one of urgency to something softer understanding. Family binds you, she murmured, her voice a ghost of warmth in the chill. But family also endangers you. Listen closely, we cannot afford to linger. I bit my lip, the heaviness of her words settling over me like a suffocating blanket. I will not leave him, I declared, fire igniting within my chest. Then you must be prepared to face the storm head-on, she replied, her tone serious, but unexpectedly gentle. You'll need to gather strength from within and remember, sometimes the light can only shine through the cracks that remain. As fear coiled in my gut, her advice pierced through the fog of uncertainty wrapping around my mind. I had spent so long wrestling with my own doubts, holding back the truths buried deep within me, but no more. The memories of my grandmother surged forward, her stories, her bravery, her belief in family, the very essence of our shared legacy. Just then, the door creaked open, and the urgency of the outside world rushed back around us. They're searching, the woman whispered, drawing us closer, her presence grounding me through the tumult of emotions swirling within. You must stay silent. I flinched with each muffled shout and thud, and Eli's grip on my hand tightened, a lifeline tethering me to the present. What do we do? He breathed, barely containing his anxiety. We wait, the woman replied, her voice unwavering, charged with resolve. But I need you to focus on Marco. If we want to find him, we'll have to work together. Will you trust me? The weight of her words crashed down on me, and in that fragile moment of connection, I nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. With renewed determination coursing through me, I felt connected not just to Marco, but to every soul bound by love, loss, and fight within these walls. Just as I took a shake, an echo of a familiar voice surging through the distance, a hint of hope that stretched between moments like the bond of family could do, against all odds. Lena, Eli. I shot upright, elation blooming in my chest as I recognized Marco's voice weaving through the chaos. Marco. Light flooded through the doorway, and there he stood, urgently scanning the room. Relief flooded through me, my heart racing even faster with an indescribable longing as I rushed towards him, barreling into his embrace as if I could absorb the safety of his presence. I was afraid I lost you, he exclaimed, holding me tightly. But you didn't, I whispered, breathless, for the world had momentarily halted, our brief reunion a balm against the worries clawing at my heart. Seeing him alive ignited an ancient fire in me. Declarations pulsed, memories intertwined, forging paths through the dark. Eli smiled, stepping closer as the woman watched closely, her expression as light and heavy as the words echoing off the walls of this hidden decade. We're all here, he reassured, grounding us in this moment of fierce union. Together. But just as my hope sharpened, an alarming crash shook the doorway, breaking our fragile cocoon as soldiers flooded into the small space. The air thickened with urgency, once more fear clashing with the undeniable instinct to protect, to fight. Stay behind me, Marco shouted, spinning to shield me from their overwhelming presence that I in that moment. I knew there was no escape from the face of conflict, and the resolve swelling within me transformed into purpose. ID never let our stories fade. I gripped the photograph tightly, choking back the need to retreat. No, I yelled, pushing past Marco and Eli, standing firm against the unexpected tide surging into our sanctuary. Let us go, I demanded, surprise fueling my defiance, voice trembling but spirited. We're just trying to find our family, their lives depend on it. The soldiers halted briefly, glancing at each other, confusion flaring in their eyes. I could see the bonds of duty tangling with the human instinct to sympathize. It was a flicker, a chance at a turn in the narrative that could leap from confrontation to understanding. Then suddenly, the woman stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. This family has endured enough suffering. Allow them to leave. My heart raced, awareness flooding through me that perhaps this was more than just desperation, it was a chance to reclaim what was ours, in ways we had yet to understand. Rise up, Marco's voice thundered in unison with the atmosphere, urging us forward as the conflict waged on. We are not defined by their cynicism. We have stories to tell, and a family to fight for. In that moment, the picture in my hand felt less like a burden and more like a banner of hope, our past blending seamlessly into the fabric of our shared fight. An eruption of murmurs erupted around us, emotions colliding in one instant. Then, silence fell like undulating waves crashing against a cliff, the atmosphere shifting as the soldiers eyed us with uncertainty for what felt like an eternity. After what felt like forever, the commanding officer stepped forward again, his voice calm, yet uncertain, as if recognizing the humanity trapped within this web of chaos. Very well, he said, glancing once more at each of us before allowing a hint of something empathy to bleed through. Get out while you still can. But it doesn't mean you have to cross our path again. With that, he signaled for his men to lower their weapons, the air shifting as they stepped back, creating space for hope against hope. Without wasting another moment, I grabbed Marco and Eli's hands, tugging them with newfound grit toward the exit as the light beckoned, allowing us to seize the moment that unfurled before us. As we rushed through the doorway, I glanced back once, one last view into the unknown that offered both safety and uncertainty. The woman stood watching, the quiet strength radiating from her, a reminder of resilience in shared lives woven together against the tide. We burst into the bright light, collapsing just outside as the quiet finally sank in, the echoes of chaos beginning to fade. I paused for a moment, the photograph still clutched tightly against my heart, our legacy. Together, I breathed, my heart swelling with something unmistakable. It was more than hope, it was the promise of stories yet to be told, of paths yet to be paved. And though the journey ahead might twist and turn through the shadows, there was one truth greater than any adversity, a light that would eternally guide me. Family was forever a thread unseen, and together, we would navigate through whatever came next. Our stories would never fade, but would rise fiercely from the ashes of separation, lighting the way for others who longed to believe. And as the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow upon us, I whispered, "Let them not be forgotten." In that moment, a quiet resolve settled in my chest like a prayer upon my lips. Our story would not only endure, it would soar.